and this is their version 3, and that is the pricey part of the puzzle, and that's oh god! And the grand total is approximately what's going on, everybody? Ratchet Wrench is back for another video. Today we're going to be filming the 2016 Audi S3. For those of you guys that have been following the channel, you know pretty much what's been done to this, but I'm sure a lot of you guys that are stopping by for the first time, we're going to be doing a total cost breakdown of how I got my car from this to how it sits right now. And this is going to be including performance and aesthetics and pretty much any other miscellaneous parts and mods that I've done to it. Without further ado, let's just get right into it. Alright, before we get into it, I just want to quickly shout out our few sponsors that we have on this car. We have ECS Tuning, EQT Tuning, and Rohana Wheels. They helped us out with a bunch of these mods, but I really can't disclose how much I paid for everything and how much discounts and stuff like that. So everything that I list here is going to be retail costs. It's going to be a full breakdown of that. Also, before we get into it as well, I want to mention that everything is going to be linked down below. So between the wheels, the EQT parts, ECS parts, so on and so forth, everything will be right down below if you want to copy this setup for yourself. Alright, so first things first, let's start with the performance side of things. There's 3 crucial components that are going to allow this car to make stage 2. And that is going to be the intake, the downpipe, and of course the tune itself. So if you make your way over here, the first thing we're going to showcase is this 034 Motorsports carbon fiber intake system. There's a bunch of intakes you could choose, but this is the one I went with. I like the closed style airbox rather than the open. A lot of feedback and people state that the closed style is just a lot better for the performance aspect. And that particular setup cost me $693. I think the results are perfect. So moving on from the intake, we got 2 more components that are crucial for the stage 2 aspect. And the first thing we're going to mention out of those 2 is the CTS Turbo downpipe. And we got a high flow cadet one. And yes, you could go non-cadet, but I don't think they can legally sell them anymore with the new EPA restrictions and everything, etc. Don't hold me to that, I don't know for sure. But we want the high flow cadet, and this one cost me $479.95. And really, that's just going to help that turbo funnel out all the exhaust fumes and just a wider diameter, so it could really increase the performance. And that is crucial for the stage 2 tune. You do not need that for stage 1, but it is required for stage 2 because you're going to be pushing a lot more power. And now moving on from that, we're going to do the last component of the puzzle, and that is the tune itself. We went with an EQT stage 2 tune, and then of course you have to get the access port to be able to tune this as well. So the tune itself was $175, and the access port is a Cobb, and this is their version 3, and that is the pricey part of the puzzle, and that's $725. And unfortunately, unless you could go to a shop and they could tune it directly to your ECU, you will need that Cobb access port. It's like a little module, and then you download the tune that you buy from EQT, plug it in to your car, and program the car. I have a video regarding that. I'll link that up above. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. So you got the $725 and then the $125 tune, and those are the 3 components to really go stage 2. I intertwine the access port with the tune because that could be all one. So now that we got those 3, technically 4 components out of the way that are crucial for stage 2, we're going to move on to some other parts that I strongly recommend, and a lot of the MQB owners recommend as well, just to produce longevity of the turbo and help this car really maintain and keep up with the tune and everything like that. The first thing we're going to mention, which you won't be able to see, I'll put up on the screen, is the EQT discharge pipe and muffler delete kit. The stock discharge pipe is very restrictive and angled and contoured. This EQT one is very wide and just has no restriction of the flow. So I think that's crucial. And then obviously the turbo muffler delete, the stock one, is very restrictive as well compared to the EQT one. And that's really going to sum it up for there. Another thing, actually all 3 of these parts you're not going to really be able to see, but the next one is the CTS Turbo inlet pipe, and that cost me $67.99. And once again, it's another aspect just to help that turbo breathe and the inlet side of things just flow nicely. The stock one is very restrictive as well compared to the CTS brand, and it's very inexpensive. I think that's one of the first mods I did to the car, along with the intake that I ran at that time. So moving on from there, One last piece of the puzzle that I highly recommend, because these cars are notorious for heat soak, especially where we live. It gets super hot on hot days when beating on the car, is the intercooler. We actually install this ourselves. I'll link that video up above because I think that's something a lot of people are scared of installing, but it's quite simple, honestly, and it's we got pretty much a step-by-step. So if you're looking to install an intercooler, check that video out. And this cost us $699.95, and of course that came with the little piping just to connect everything. But this, like I said, is very crucial, and just keeping those IATs down is a must. But I really won't go into too much detail about that. So that's going to conclude that little section. And one other thing I just want to do, maybe like an honorable mention, not necessary for the performance or the tune or anything, but we did go with the ECS tuning catch can, and that's really just to prevent any kind of oil or anything in the intake track. Just keep it all clean. Like I said, it's more of a maintenance, kind of preventative maintenance to keep that turbo clean. And that cost me $476.65. So it was a little pricey. It's not necessary if you really want to keep this car long and keep it running healthy and everything. Definitely go with a catch can. And like I said, shout out to ECS. This is a beautiful piece, very clean, and it's very nice. So we got that, and that's going to conclude everything in the engine bay that's really required for 400 horsepower and the Stage 2 tune. So now, without further ado, a lot of people want to hear this car, want to see how it feels, kind of display that on camera. So let's take this thing for a drive. We'll close up here. We'll get somewhat of a cold start, probably not, but one thing I do want to mention real quick, for the exhaust system, I have, like I said, the downpipe, and then I have the stock catback, but I do have a resonator delete, and that's from ECS Tuning as well, and that cost me $150.95, and I think it just gives it a little bit of tone. I have ran an AWE catback with this downpipe, and unfortunately it sounds too raspy. I've talked about that in many videos, so if you want to check those out, see why I switched to just going back to the stock one, feel free. We'll get a bunch of those videos. But now, let's start it up and see how it sounds. So before we get into driving around, one thing I do want to mention that I didn't include before is we have a DSG tune for this. It's by EQT. It's $400, so it's a little pricey. It's not a necessity, but it helps get those crisp shift points. And I didn't really include it before because it's not a necessity, like I said, but it does help with the longevity as well with the DSG, because these things are not cheap to replace. So let's get into driving and see how this thing is. Alright, so quickly, I just kind of want to drive around and show you how it sounds with my current setup in the interior. Right now I have the valves closed, and it's not overpowering. These cars are pretty well dampened, so you shouldn't really hear anything. But now if I open up the valves, it'll automatically downshift me, and it's a lot louder, just exhaust dumping. As you can tell by when we were doing the cold starts, and you might be able to pick it up on camera, we do have some pops and bangs. We opted in for that with one of the tunes I got from EQT, so you could always add on that and get the pops and bangs. Let's see if I get one good here. There we go. It's not really warmed up yet. I do notice it does perform a lot better when I'm really being on the car, but we just turn it on, so don't really want to get too crazy with it. I think paired with the exhaust, the downpipe, that the exhaust setup I have, this is a really common setup that I see a lot of people run, and it's probably one of the best sounding ones out there. Yes, if you don't do the downpipe, obviously you can't go stage 2, but there's a lot of aftermarket exhaust brands that sound phenomenal. Unfortunately, with the downpipe, it just gets a little too raspy. But man, this is like sex to my ears every time I'm going to work or something. Little pops and bangs. And it's not too much where like we have those BMWs that are a little, no hate on the BMWs, but sometimes your pops and bangs are a little too long.
AK-47?
Yeah, exactly, like unnecessary. This, I think, subtle. Man, I'm speechless every time I get in this car. I usually have the radio on, so I don't always hear my pops and bangs, but now just focusing on it, putting me in love with it all over again. But moving away from the exhaust, we do have, like I said, we have the intake that I showed before, and we do have an ECS little diverter valve, little blow-off valve spacer, and that was very, very cheap. And once again, I think that was when I installed the inlet piping and the intake, I did this mod as well, and that cost me $64.95. I don't know if it'll be able to pick it up with my exhaust, but it does. When I let off the gas, all that pressure just kind of escapes, as it has like 3 little vents that just creates like a nice little whoosh noise, and it's also hard to hear with the intake as well. I think it's a cool mod to do right off the bat. Like I said, it's cheap and it just gives it that ultimate driving experience and just more fun. So if I can get it to do it. It's not gonna be, you're not gonna be able to hear it over the exhaust. I could hear it, Wes could hear it, but just the camera might not be able to pick it up. Another thing, which we'll get to in a little bit, is how this thing drives. As you can tell, the car is very low, extremely low, bottomed out on these coilovers. We'll get to the price aspect of things a little later when we find a new spot to park and talk about it. But the handling with these coilovers is phenomenal. I mean, we went for the expensive of the expensive ones, and we got all the supporting hardware. Once again, I'll get into a little bit, that could just make this ride as smooth as possible. I love this car. I mean, coming from the Mark V GTI, slam that thing, and going cheap on coilovers, definitely invest in quality coilovers, especially if you live in New Jersey, New York, all those unfortunate places that don't patch any roads. It just kind of makes that, and if it's your daily driver, it just makes that commute a lot better. Look good, ride good, feel good. So now, enough of me talking. Let's go get some flybys, drive-bys, and really open this thing up now that it's warmed up and have some fun with it. So let's do that.
Damn, this thing's quick.
It is. It really is.
Uber for Wes?
We were cooking.
Alright guys, it's going to be pretty comical. I'm going to try and hold the camera as steady as I can on a boosted launch here from a stop. Generally my head and stomach go back there, and it's so hard to even look straight, but
Just the all-wheel drive launches are just crazy. Let's see if I can do it.
Amusement park for free. Oh God! Woo!
Shit, man.
Damn, never gets old.
Yeah, like,
Wow.
my left front tire is bald on the inner because I was an idiot and didn't get it aligned after I first got the coilovers on. I was just lazy, didn't feel like spending the money. But you can tell every time I launch, it doesn't grab and it just like hesitates a little bit, and it's really freaking annoying because there's just no traction in that left tire. But one of these days, you know, I'll fix it.
It also doesn't help. It's 45 degrees out, and the asphalt's probably not that good.
And these tires are not warmed up nearly enough.
Yeah, we haven't been driving for more than, I don't know, 15 minutes, so.
Yeah. But yeah, now we're gonna pull up to a park and we're gonna start listing off all the aesthetic mods and all the little miscellaneous stuff that we could add to the total cost breakdown, because it's a lot. So we'll see what we got. So we just got to the lot. We're gonna go over all the aesthetic mods. First things first, as you can see, smack dab in the middle, this is not your common Audi S3 bumper. Pre-facelift, of course. So we actually went ahead and, actually, let me backtrack a little bit. I accidentally up my front bumper and backed up off a curve and ripped it off completely. So I said, screw it, might as well get the RS3 style conversion. And we went with the BK Motorsports front bumper, and that was 900 bucks. And then of course, this paint job was 250 bucks. Luckily I knew a guy. So right then and there, changes the whole front, and it does come with this black lip, which is an RS3 style lip, and I have curved that quite a lot, as you can tell. But the bumper and the lip was 900 bucks. And then moving on here, we have our RS3 style front grille, and that as well was pretty penny. That was $469.99. Previously I had one that was chrome on the outside, but still that same look with the Quattro. Just kind of gives it that RS3 feel and just a little more sporty. But I ended up going with all black this time, all gloss black, and I think it looks a lot better. So moving on from the bumpers and everything, quickly I'm just going to mention, these are usually chrome. I ended up going with black ones. I got those very cheap off eBay. I could have went with authentic, genuine Audi part ones, but it was just too much money. So these mirror caps were $18.99, and those were off eBay. And the fitment was perfect. They came from China, which is, I hate buying and supporting China. A cheap little mod, really easy to install. All right, so making our way on from the mirrors, let's make our way down here. As you can see, I got the brushed bronze Rohana wheels, and I was always a fan of the Subaru with the bronze/gold with their blue, so I kind of put my own spin on it and did the brushed bronze with the Sepang blue. These are 19 inches and they're 8.5 offset. They were very expensive. They cost me $2,100. So they were up there, but I think these completely changed the whole look of the car. They are paired with some Continental Pro Context DWSs, which all four of those were $987.96. So those were also very expensive, but since it's such a unique size, it's a 19-inch, but it has like the two 35 ZR19s. There's a very limited selection of these. I personally went with the Continentals. I know a lot of people go with the Michelins, but since this is my daily driver, I kind of wanted something that rides comfortably, that can handle the snow, which we'll probably get in a couple of days, the rain, and then of course, you know, the traction when I'm kind of getting on it. So I think the Continental DWSs is the way to go. Pay to play. They are good tires.
I just want to add real quick, tires, like you said, absolutely, you got to have good tires if it's a daily. And then the wheels, you're going to, whatever brand it is, if you want good solid wheels, you're going to pay a lot, but it really changes the whole look of the car.
It does. Like, I could have went with some, you know, some cheaper options, but I really like the quality that Rohana produces, and I think they just changed the whole look of the car completely. So one other thing that you could visibly see is my car is dumped. It is very low. Yeah, get low, show them the right angle for that. But like I mentioned in the car, we went with a little more expensive brand coilovers just because I've ran cheaper ones back in my day, and they failed me, and I really regret it. So I always said I'm going to go with a little more expensive. So we ended up going with the Bilstein B16 coilovers, and that was $1,629. And of course, putting on the expensive coilovers, I decided to just go with all new hardware. And we got the ECS tuning heavy duty kit, and that was $352.60. That's for the front and rear. That's the top hats. That's all the hardware, the nuts, bolts, all the bushings, etc. All that stuff. So it's all new. So this thing rides like brand new.
I can attest to that. It does.
It does. It's smooth for how low it looks. You would think it rides like but really, it does ride good. Sorry, I'm a little all over the place. It's very cold. It got really cold real quick. And then one other thing I do want to mention, two other things. Let me backtrack a little bit. Another thing going along with the suspension is I got the ECS tuning adjustable sway bar links for the front. It gives that extra customizable aspect just to fine tune it on how you really want to ride it if you're trying to get into the nitty gritty. And that kit cost me $169.95. So the suspension alone was a good chunk of change, but I really just decided to go all out. This is an expensive car. I kind of want to maintain that value. If I ever do sell it, I want to make sure everything functions as it should. So before we get on to the other parts of the car, I just want to mention the last piece of the puzzle for this coilover kit is my stock suspension was equipped with DCC or mag ride. And I had to actually cancel that out with these coilovers because there was even a pricier set of Bilsteins, but I just couldn't justify doing that just to have that mag ride. Yes, you do lose the comfortability aspect with turning off DCC, but it does ride just as good in my opinion. And that kit was a KW kit, and that was $423.95, and that will just eliminate the car from having mag ride and throwing a check engine light or some kind of code for that. We'll make our way to the back one. We'll switch up the angle a little bit. As you can see, I had some drilled and slotted rotors. I went with drilled and slotted all the way around with some carbon ceramic brake pads, and that kit cost me $339.95 for front and rear, and that honestly is a steal. I think that was pretty reasonably priced, and these were Power Stop brand. A lot of people say I cheaped out on it, but personally, I've never had a problem with Power Stop. I know we've run it in some of our other cars on the channel. I could have went with RS3 style brakes or a big brake kit, but I just didn't feel like spending $3,000 when these, do the job for me. I stop on a dime and all that stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much going to conclude all the tire area. Now we're going to go on to, it's very dirty, but the maxed in side skirts. The little extensions, I think those are a nice touch. It gives it that ground clearance effect and just makes it look a lot lower as well. I have stepped on it a couple of times. I do tend to step on it just sometimes, so it is what it is. But that kit cost me $249.99, and they're very durable. Like I said, I stepped on them and they really don't go anywhere. It's held in by some double-sided tape and then a bunch of self-tappers, and it just bolts right up. As you can see by the theme of my car and all the colors, I do like the gloss black. I did that for pretty much the lips, the side skirts, and we'll get to the diffuser in a second. The only thing I'm lacking is I'm gonna have to get these gloss black because I don't like the chrome or whatever, that like silver look. It's not really a chrome, but I'll get that gloss black, and I think it'll kind of complete the car. But if we make our way back here, as you can see, I have a different style diffuser. I have ECS tunings. They're gloss black diffuser, and it's a lot more aggressive. It gives it like a little more ground clearance effect compared to the stock silver one. And that part cost me $419.95. And I think that was a super easy install to do. I highly suggest either getting a gloss black one or carbon fiber, or just something that's a little more aggressive than the stock one, just to complete that rear end. Alright guys, so that's going to wrap up today's video. We hope you enjoyed, and I know this is the moment everyone's been waiting for. How much did I actually spend on this car to get it to look like this and perform like this? And the grand total is approximately $12,892. That's a lot of freaking money. That is a lot of freaking money. But I wouldn't change it for anything else. I'm sure that's not going to be the end of my costs. I'm going to be probably putting a bigger turbo in down the line this summer, hopefully, and some other miscellaneous mods that I'll keep a hush-hush for now. Yeah, so that's going to wrap up today's video. Please give us a thumbs up. If you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe. Turn on that notification bell. You'll never want to miss a video regarding this thing. It's got big plans for this year. Cannot wait to showcase them with you. The thing's going to be a monster. But yeah, that's it for today. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.